And welcome back to yet another episode of The Amazing City. As always, we are your hosts, Antonio Slater and Jack Ramsey with this fantastic mug. Um, well, Jack, this sucks. Yeah,
Yeah, those two went hand in hand a
they
lot.
went really hand in hand. I guess what is it, 2 weeks ago at this point, where they got upset in the wild card series against the San Diego Padres, who are now 3 wins away from going to the World Series. So I guess that makes it a little bit more palatable of a loss. But it still hurts, man. Like it's still you
Yeah.
watch this team the entire year. They're so consistent, so consistent, so consistent. Every time they face this tough task, they always rise to the occasion and they win a series from the Dodgers. They take 4 to 5 from Atlanta. They do this. They find ways to get the job done. And for the first time all year, after winning 101 games, they couldn't get it done. And they lost 2 out of 3 to San Diego. And they watch the team celebrate on their field.
You know, I think a lot of people have made the point that, the Mets and the Braves are in the sprint basically starting mid-June when that win streak from Atlanta starts to hit like 7, 8 games and the lead starts to shrink and shrink and shrink. You realize this is going to be a race,
Right.
so these two teams are in a dead sprint from basically mid-June until October. And it tires these guys out.
Right.
And we saw the same thing with Atlanta. Atlanta just dropped a dud against Philly.
Yeah.
I mean, you could argue that the Philly series for Atlanta was worse than the San Diego series for the Mets.
I would say so because Atlanta had the break, so they had the time
Right.
to get rested and prepare even more and
The Mets
rest all
had
their
2 days.
guys. And what's that?
Wild card series, you have 2 days off after the regular
They only
season.
had one day off.
You get one day. Atlanta has
Yeah,
four, five,
Wednesday
six.
was the final day of the season. They had Thursday as an off day and a travel day for the opposing team and a workout day, and then it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The team that
Yeah.
had a bye had, I think, 5 days to rest up.
No, yeah. And, there's just no other way to put it other than the Mets dropped a dud, the Braves dropped a dud, the Dodgers dropped a dud.
Yeah,
I mean, I think the criticism of the playoff format isn't fair. It's
no,
only
it's
been a
not fair at all.
year,
Yeah, like
but I think
relax.
you have two teams that are in a dead sprint with each other for 70, 65% of the season.
Right.
And then you have, a Dodgers team that hasn't played a meaningful game since mid-June, basically.
If that.
Right. I mean, they buried the Padres early. The Giants fell apart, and that was their only competition. So,
Yeah,
you look at the Yankees. I mean, they got through to the ALCS, but that bullpen is banged up as banged up could be.
sure.
And then you have a Aroldis Chapman going AWOL. You know, the
That's a
the
wild situation.
100, yeah. Well, you think like the one like dominant team in baseball here, like your top five teams, all the 100 win teams plus the Yankees. You have Houston, who had just enough heat on them from Seattle that they couldn't slip up. So they're really playing meaningful games in September. They're not hurt. They're still fairly healthy, and they're steamrolling everyone.
Yeah, they've been the only
They're a
team
wagon.
that's
They're a wagon.
yeah.
I mean,
It's that's not even debatable. I think
and to
you
think that
watch
they that they're
this Astros
considering,
team.
well,
eh,
to think they're considering moving on from their GM, from James Click.
I like you watch this Astros team, and it's abundantly clear that even though the Dodgers have the best record, it's very very clear, top to bottom, this Astros team is the best team in baseball.
They're the best organization in baseball, top to bottom.
Right. Like if we take away 2017, we're talking about one of the best dynasties in sports.
I
Like
think you could argue like
this is their sixth consecutive ALCS appearance.
I think another thing we're not really considering is, you know,
I found this on the web.
Thank you, Siri.
oops, thanks, I watched. People want to talk about the Dodgers being this wagon, being this closest thing the baseball has to a dynasty, playoffs for 10 straight years, which is great and all that. But
All you have to show is a Fugazi ring.
all you have to show is your 2020 ring. And if you're looking beyond that, 2015, they choked to the Mets. The Mets should
Right.
not have won that series.
No. But
The Mets,
Daniel Murphy was Babe Ruth that series.
right. 2016, they run into the Cubs. 2017, can't beat the Astros. 2018 they lose to the Red Sox, or was that 19?
No, 18 was the Red Sox because 19 they lost to the Nationals.
Right. Right. Yep. 2018 they can't beat the Red Sox. 2019 they lose to a wild card Nationals team. 2020 they get their cheap ring. 21 they get upended by an upstart Braves team. 22 they can't get past the Padres. I mean, just looking at the Dodgers, it's just they're going to lose and choke in the playoffs. It's just a matter of which round.
Yeah, and to me, it all comes down to the big difference to me is the managers. Like, you can win all the games in the regular season you want, but and I've always had this critique. I've never been a big Dave Roberts fan. I just don't think he's
Dave
that great
Roberts
of a
was
manager, especially when you compare him to someone like Dusty Baker, who took a team that was in turmoil because of 2017. You bring in a guy like Dusty Baker, who was already a walking Hall of Famer, and now, top to bottom, you now have
There's
the
no
guy who's running
reason.
the best organization in baseball.
There's no reason the Astros should not win a ring this year.
Yeah,
In all honesty, and I even just think I think back to your Dave Roberts critique. He was talking, I think, about Josh Hader during the series. He mentioned Josh Hader throwing a four-seam fastball.
mm-hmm.
Might have been someone else. Someone looked into it. This pitcher he was talking about did not throw a four-seam fastball. Robert's talking about a four-seam fastball with hand side run that can push a couple miles per hour faster than it looks like it is coming out the hand. And this guy he's talking about,
Probably
I forget,
Musgrove.
it was one of the relievers.
Mm.
It was one of the
Suarez,
Padres
maybe?
relievers.
Almost.
Yeah, Nick Martinez maybe.
Maybe.
But this pitcher just doesn't throw a four-seam fastball.
Yeah.
I think Dave Rogers might end up being the most successful manager just to get canned. And I'm not really sure how you can keep running him back out there. But I think that's kind of, if you look at the NL as a whole right now, unless someone blows away in the offseason, I'm not really sure who I'm trusting going into next year because the Dodgers just won 113 games and got dumped by the team that they were destroying all year.
Yeah. I do want to make one point about the Padres, though, and when you look at how the wild card was framing out, and this is why I was so critical for the Mets to win the division, is that the one team I did not want to play was the Padres because they had the Mets number the entire regular season. They
have the most talent of any team in the wild card.
Oh my god, and that's another thing. I get they're a wild card team, and they were like 20,000 games back from the Dodgers in the division. This is by no means an underdog story for the San Diego Padres.
No, they finally
one
put
of the
their shit
highest
together.
payrolls in the sport. You got Manny Machado making $300 million. You have Musgrove, you just signed to an extension. Blake Snell's making good money. Darvish is making huge money. Then you go out and trade.
Get paid.
Yeah, and then you go out and trade for Josh Hader, who went on is, as you could see, one of the most dominant pitchers, let alone relievers, in the sport. And then, oh, by the way, you go out and trade for one of the most talented players in the history of the game of baseball in Juan Soto. This is not an underdog team. Like that's why, like, again, they had the Mets number. They won. They're the better team in those two games. I'm still convinced Joe Musgrove was doing something because what the hell's going on with your ears, guy?
Nothing. It's lighting. It was
not lighting.
That reeked of desperation. I lost so much respect for Buck Showalter when he came out and pulled that shit. It is the sixth inning. You just
I don't know why he waited until the sixth, but yeah,
you just narrowly escaped getting perfectoed. And you come out and you pull that. But then to say afterwards that you were kind of onto it from the start, why'd you wait 2 hours and 6 innings?
And that's the thing. If you didn't like the third inning, all right, fine.
But why the desperate move? I thought it was sad. Honestly, I thought it was sad. I was embarrassed to be a Mets fan. Being a Mets fan, you can deal with the losses.
You look at every single number from Musgrove that game, and everything was drastically up. Everything was up.
But here's the thing: the spin rates are up, yes, but his velocity
contributes so much to adrenaline.
But the velocity was up too. He was sitting 1, 2, 3 take, but you're not getting extra speed on your fastball.
I get that. I get that.
But when
the tack is more so for the spin.
But when the speed on your pitches is up, so will the spin rates. direct correlation there.
I get it.
And you look deeper in the numbers, they weren't that far off.
I don't
They
know
were
about
not
that.
out of the ordinary for as velocity correlates to spin rates. They were not that far off. The spin rates themselves, if you're looking like tunnel vision at that, yes, they were way up. But you have to factor in he's hitting 2-3 miles per hour faster on the fastball.
But
So
then
as you're
how is he
more
getting 2-3 miles per hour faster on a fastball?
I don't know. But you're not getting that from goop. You're not getting that from any sort of substance. Who knows? It's a hometown kid who's trying to pitch his team to a World Series victory for the first time in franchise history. Maybe that's enough to get him to go out there going from 94, 95 to 96, 97 or whatever it was.
I don't know. I'm still I'm a
Unless
little
he was juicing.
I'm a little fishy.
Unless he was juicing.
Maybe he's juicing.
I'm not here to say he's juicing for legal reasons.
I'm not listen, I'm not gonna say that either for several reasons.
But
but
I don't think
listen,
there's anything he could have had on field that would have made the velocity jump up.
either way,
But either way, you
listen,
should not have been in that
Musgrove was
spot in
shoving
the
it
first
down the
place.
Mets' throats the entire time, no matter what.
No,
They were gonna win that game.
And we need to talk about Max Scherzer.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
just as a whole, we need to talk about the Mets had their 3 best starters.
You lined it up the way you wanted it
The
to.
best 1, 2, 3 in the league.
Right.
They had that lined up
Right.
for Atlanta,
Mhm.
for the Padres.
Mhm.
And you get one quality start
Mhm.
out of those 6 games. You get one
Yeah.
good outing. You get one playoff level outing.
Yeah.
And even then, like DeGrom is shaky at times in that start against the Padres. I think he had like
But
first
then
and third,
DeGrom
no
did
one
what
out.
DeGrom does. And when he doesn't have his best stuff, he still fights through 6 innings. And that's an ace. That's an ace.
It was tough to watch.
I mean, it was tough to watch for anxiety reasons, but I never really had any doubts about DeGrom. Because like you saw that he didn't have his A+ stuff early on, but he found like that just still goes to show that when DeGrom isn't at his best, he's still the best pitcher in baseball. Like he's still shoved for 6 innings.
Oh no, he's still a head and shoulders above the rest.
Right. And I guess this is a somewhat of a transition because let's face it, the reality is there's a chance that was indeed the final start for Jacob deGrom as a New York Met. Now you hear the comments from Steve Cohen. You hear the comments that he's going to once again spend a lot of money and he's willing to, do whatever it takes to enhance this team. So that makes you feel a little bit better about potentially deGrom coming back. But reality is, it's by no means a sure thing. He's going to have suitors. I'm sure Atlanta's going to be in the conversation. The Giants will be in the conversation. The Cardinals might be in the conversation. They're going to, I mean, if you're a team and you have money to spend and you want to try to enhance your team, potentially win a World Series in the next couple of years, you're going to be in the market for Jacob deGrom. So I'm not doubting that the Mets will likely have the highest offer, but that doesn't mean that he's going to return.
I think it comes down to, I'm sure Billy and Steve are sitting there with the big board. Who we need to bring back, what we need to bring back. And there's going to be guys that are prioritized.
Sure.
And guys that are not, for lack of a better phrase. They won't be.
Guys that are expendable.
Right. There have been reports the Mets don't even want Edwin Diaz to touch free agency.
Right.
They want to get that done before he hits the open market.
I believe that.
They're expected to be very aggressive on Brandon Nimmo.
Mm-hmm.
But all we've heard is that, DeGrom and Billy sat down, talked one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
That's really about it.
Had a good conversation.
They had a good talk. DeGrom is a guy who's going to set his own market.
Oh, yeah.
There is going to be no DeGrom is setting the pitcher market. No. There's the DeGrom market. There's the starting pitcher market.
Yeah.
Verlander, Rodon,
it's
Kershaw,
2 different things.
Waka, whoever. These guys are all in that market.
Right.
Then there's the Jacob deGrom market.
Right.
in that market, the Mets are going to be in it.
Yeah. There are going to be 3 markets this offseason. The Jacob deGrom market, the Aaron Judge market, the rest of free agency. That's how this winter is going to go.
No, absolutely. And it's going to be, at least for the Mets, if you're looking at the DeGrom market, it is a little frightening that the only other reported team was the Braves.
Sure. But then you look at who reported that, and it's like, okay, it was Buster.
I
Okay.
can. I mean, from what I've heard, it's true.
Sure.
That Atlanta is a spot that's desirable for DeGrom. It sounds like he wants to win.
Okay.
He seemingly
New
wants
York.
to stay on the East Coast.
Okay. New York.
He wants to be out of the spotlights. He does not want to be. I think I think a really good example of it is you see the way all this Matt Harvey stuff has unfolded. Really, since he missed the workout and then the blood clot.
Right.
Really, since then, you look at that and you're thinking about, how is the New York market? How is the media? How is the press? How have all these things impacted these players? Matt Harvey's made out to be some villain because of mental illness.
Yeah.
We has Terry Collins dunking on him and saying all sorts of things on SNY just to get a 2-minute clip.
Right.
The market just hasn't been kind to players. It's not.
Oh no.
And people say, it's
New York
not
media
for every.
is awful. We all know this.
It's not for everyone. It's scary. It's intimidating. Great, but these are also human beings with family and children.
Sure.
I think that's the priority. That's you have to prioritize there.
Yeah.
And I think if you're Jacob deGrom, you're looking at things. If you don't want your every move to be your every step, your every breath to be documented, you want to win and you want to stay on the East Coast. You're gonna look at Boston. You're gonna look at Atlanta. You're gonna look at Philly.
He's not going to Philly.
I think that's a reasonable spot. I think it's a spot that makes sense.
If the whole staying out of the spotlight is true, Philly ain't the place. And
Philly's
if you want
not
to
gonna
stay,
track his.
if you want to,
Philly's not a baseball town.
And if you want to stay out of a place that isn't going to track your every move and be harsh for every time you don't throw the perfect pitch and every time you get a hit, you think Philly is a place to go? They booed Bryce Harper in his first game. They booed Bryce Harper.
I think if that's what you're looking at, if these are your qualifications,
they threw garbage at Santa.
I think
Philly is not the place to go if you want to be all hunky dory and happy all the time.
I think if these are your parameters, Philly makes more sense than New York. But I think it goes back to point one: is winning.
Right.
First time in the playoffs, and Lord knows how many years for the Phillies.
Right.
And you question, how fluky was it?
Mm-hmm.
How serious is this playoff run they went on? Because in theory they've been built up to be a playoff team since 2017.
Sure.
But they've since 2017 missed the playoffs in 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. They make it in 22.
As the final wildcard team.
Right. So, you start to think about the sustainability of it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you think, next year, if there are teams that are going to turn around and miss the playoffs again, your immediate pick is going to be Philly.
Sure.
Not New York, not St. Louis, not the Padres, Dodgers, Braves. It's going to be Philly. I really think that those top 5 teams are going to be in the playoffs every year for the next 3-4 years.
You would hope.
And
you would
you'd
imagine.
think you're right. And you'd think that rotating door, that last spot will be maybe Philly, Milwaukee, San Francisco.
Maybe the
I like the way,
Cubs.
I like the way Arizona's trajecting.
Sure. A lot of young talent there.
Oh, absolutely. And, a lot of money to spend.
Yeah.
When they deem it's time. But, this isn't like the American League where you got really like 2 really good teams and everyone else, is really kind of up in the air.
Right.
You have like 5 clear-cut top teams in the National League. And that last that last spot. I don't trust the sustainability of Philly.
I think that's fair.
I think this kind of segues us into another good conversation, just to looking back at the NL East as a whole.
Mhm.
You have the three playoff teams. You have the three teams. Of the three teams, you have the one team that goes in any inkling of a run.
Yeah. You have the
The
Mets and Braves that both win
80,
101 wins in the regular
87,
season.
88 win team.
Something like that. Yeah.
I still don't think they know who their shortstop is.
They definitely don't know who their shortstop is for next year.
It's a team with the most holes.
Yeah.
But we've seen it before. We'll see it again. Upstart wildcard team's been counted out. It just gets hot. But I think if it's I think this is also where you look back at why it was so important for the Mets to win the division.
Yeah.
If you get Philly in the NLDS, the team you went 14-5 against in the regular season,
Yeah.
you get Philly,
Yeah.
the team you had a 7-run comeback against,
Yeah. And a no hitter.
and a no-hitter,
Mm-hmm.
and Mark Canha owns.
Mm-hmm.
He's a partial owner of the Philadelphia Phillies.
He sure is. It's factual statements.
Tough scenes in Philly when the Mets were in town.
It's yeah. Yeah.
But you get that draw. You couldn't win one game in Atlanta. They finished with the same record.
I don't want to talk about finishing with the same record because it pisses me off so much.
Do you have like one random game you look back on and you're like, if you just won that fucking game? Because I have one.
I
think it was
have
like
a bunch.
I think it was the first series of the year. Buck would not hit JD for Cano with 2 on and 2 out in Washington.
Oh my god. It feels like so long ago that Cano is a part of this team. It doesn't even feel like it was this year. But yeah, I mean, you look at that game. You look at I think it was the second series of the year where you love the guy, and I hope he comes back in some role, but you put in Trevor Williams in a 1-run game in the 8th inning. The comeback that fell short in San Francisco, losing 2 out of 3 to the Cubs, losing 2 out of 3 to Miami, getting swept by the goddamn Nationals at home, getting swept by the goddamn Braves in the last series there.
What they do? Drop 2 out of 3 to the Cubs at home.
Getting absolutely pantsed by the Oakland Athletics when they
Well, you got swept by the Cubs at home too.
Yeah.
I think you went 4-3 against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it's
But no, I look back.
that 2 I think it was like 2-7 stretch against the Cubs, Pirates, and Marlins. That did you in. And we've said it before, and we're going to say it again because we're going to, the entire offseason to just sit on it and sulk. All year, we just said, get to September with a lead in the division, and you're going to be okay. They got to September with what, a 3-game lead in the division? Something around there?
I can check.
You got to September, you had a lead, you controlled your destiny for a month. And I'm not going to say you fell flat on your face, but
I think you could argue that you did though, because Atlanta did not have the world's. Atlanta did not, blow anyone's socks off in September.
No, and that gave you another opportunity. You had Atlanta finally cooling off. You had the easiest schedule in baseball, and you couldn't take advantage of it.
Atlanta went. Let's see. The Mets went in 84-48, so they won 17 games in the final. In September, October, the Mets won 17 games. Atlanta won 20.
There you go.
Atlanta went 20-10.
Right.
Which is definitely a step down from the 730 winning percentage they were.
It also doesn't. It didn't seem like they went 20-10. They seemed like a more beatable team in that month.
But they went 5-1 in their last 6.
Right, and they went 3-0 against the Mets.
And that's what it comes down to. So they're in theory going into that Mets series. Not in theory, they are 15-9.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Which feels a lot more like, how they played that month. Still good, still beating teams.
Yeah.
So they finished September, I don't know, probably 16-9, 17-9. But it's those last two games.
Yeah.
It is those 3 games with the Mets, which is what it comes down to. And it was such a fun season.
Oh my God. This is my favorite season that I've like really watched because I was 12 for 2007, but like I was 12.
2007, what about your favorite season?
I'm just like kind of rolling through 2006, I meant to say.
I was gonna say, you say this.
2006 when I don't want to talk
You
about
enjoyed the
2007.
pain.
Yeah. I love pain. I'm a Mets fan. 2006 I was 11. That was fun, but like I was 11. How much can I really enjoy that? I was too busy playing Pokemon. You know what I mean? 2015, that was fun. That was like a really just enjoyable year because the entire time, let's face it, that was kind of house money for the most part. You got to the postseason and it was, let's see where it goes from here. They were a 90-win team and they somehow made it to the World Series. But this team, this year, I mean,
It just felt right.
it felt right. It felt like this was going to be the year where they kind of finally broke through that seal and made that push to the World Series. Unfortunately, like obviously fell short. And again, you lost to the team that then went on and beat the Dodgers. And yeah, we kind of crapped on the Dodgers before, but still, they beat a team that, much like the Mets to the Braves, had their number. I mean, the Mets to the Phillies, because I think the Dodgers went 15-4 against the Padres in the regular season or something along those lines. And then they went in and they won 3 out of 4. So, I mean, that lightened it a little bit, made me feel a little better, but it still sucks, man. It sucks. Especially when, again, you might not see Diaz again. You might not see DeGrom again. Nimmo might be gone. Walker might be gone. Carrasco. There's a lot of question marks about who's coming back to this team next year.
I think Pete said it best when he said that it's the toughest part of this season and just how it ended is knowing that it's just the question marks that comes with.
Right.
And this can kind of segue us into our next topic of, since you didn't win it all, you aren't ending 2022 with a ring. Arguably the biggest postseason or biggest offseason in Mets history.
Yeah.
You have DeGrom, Walker, Carrasco, Bassett, 4 of your 5 starters are free agents. Actually, I'm not convinced the Mets aren't picking up Carrasco's option. 3 are free agents.
That's
7
fair.
of your 8 relievers are free agents.
Mhm.
Including your all-world closer.
Right.
Your starting center fielder is a top 5 center fielder in baseball.
Sure.
Is a free agent.
Mhm.
You came up short. You have 3 of your top prospects, 2 guaranteed top 20 prospects in baseball, 1 who's a fringe top 100 guy, already and are here.
Mhm.
The changes in this offseason are going to be ginormous.
Yeah.
So I think the question is Billy Epler, in your opinion, the right guy to be running the biggest offseason in team history?
I mean,
and I'm
look at
not
what
gonna
he
let you. I'm not gonna let you say no because it should be David Stearns, because you cannot. Because that's been the one thing I've seen a bunch of people say is it should be David Stearns. It should be David Stearns. He is employed by another team willingly. It's
Right.
not like he's being held hostage by the Milwaukee Brewers.
Right.
He signed the contract. He's willingly an employee of the Milwaukee Brewers. So that can't be your answer.
That's not my answer.
Beautiful.
I'm
shame
looking
on anyone who thinks it should be.
I'm looking solely at the people that are in-house, right? Because obviously there are external options. I get that. But you look at what Billy Epler did in his first offseason here, and it was kind of sidetracked because we had the whole lockout. So there were some questions about what exactly was going on in the season. But lockout ends, and he got right to work. You got Max Scherzer, you got Starling Marte, you got Mark Hanna, you got Bassett. Like, this guy made moves that made this team 101 wins. Yeah, the addition of Buck Showalter absolutely helped with that because this is the best managed team that I've seen probably ever, and in terms of for the Mets. So I don't understand how we can sit here and say that he's not the right guy for the job. I get the Mets didn't have the greatest trade deadline, but look at the roster that he still constructed. You can't deny that it was a World Series contending roster.
No, I mean,
I'm saying he absolutely. I have no problem going into the 2023 offseason with Billy Epler running the ship.
yeah, I think the criticisms of the deadline are fair. We've all been over that. They were too conservative.
Of course.
But he keeps hammering home one key point, which is long-term sustainability.
Right.
The Mets want to win in 2023, 2028, 2033.
Right.
That is the goal.
And I think another thing we need to look at, it's yes, obviously Billy Epler is making the moves, but another thing is you have a guy like Steve Cohen who's also has that eyes on the now and the future thing. Look at what he said when his opening press conference. Wants to win now and in the future, and he wants to win in a 3 to 5 year window. Well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? This is year 3.
Yeah, I mean, they won
You
100.
think Steve Cohen isn't going to go balls to the wall to win that title?
What was the report that Sandy Alderson suggested that Steve Cohen would be willing to go up to
350.
450?
Was it 450?
450. 450 is bringing everyone back and getting Judge.
Let me ask you a
And
question.
then trading for Ohtani.
And please let me know if I'm crazy here. The fact that they lost in the wild card round actually makes me more confident that DeGrom's coming back. I felt like if they made a run, if they got to the World Series and potentially won a World Series, it was more likely that he left. But I feel like now, because of the unfinished business kind of mentality that Cohen's going to have, or I'm not to put words in his mouth, but that I think he'll have, it'll be more likely that DeGrom comes back. Your thoughts?
I think in the end, money talks.
Sure. I mean, you say, hey, listen, DeGrom, here's $55 million a year. It's hard to say no.
Yeah. And I think another thing you kind of have to consider is this is probably the best Mets team
roster-wise, probably since '86.
So I'm thinking easily the best DeGrom's been on. I mean, you could argue
that's not even a question.
2016 team on paper.
On paper, it's not even a question. This is the best team DeGrom has been a part of. This is the best New York Mets roster on paper, top to bottom, since '86.
No, yeah, I mean, so I think your hope would be that DeGrom sees that this is part of a greater thing.
Right.
This is the start of something, not a fluke.
Yeah.
And you want guys to buy into that. You want guys to buy, like, if you're Jacob DeGrom, you hope that he's looking at this like, all right, well, they have players X, Y, and Z under contract.
Right.
I got Diaz backing me up for the next 5 years.
Right.
I got Nimmo straight away in center for the next 6. I got Pete, McNeil, Lindor, Beatty,
right,
pitching Alvarez. You have this foundation for long-term success.
Yeah. Yeah. I also wonder if legacy means anything to DeGrom. If he wants to be that guy that
he's right on the cusp of being the best starting pitcher in Mets history.
If he finishes his career with the Mets, yes.
I think if he has 3 more good years and like 1 more DeGrom year,
right,
I think he passes Seaver.
I think that's fair. I mean, he finished.
If he has 1 more DeGrom year with like an incredibly low 2, barely high 3 ERA,
right,
or incredibly low 2, barely high 1 ERA, and he does what he did in 18, 19, I think he very well puts himself into the category or into the stature of the best starting pitcher in Mets history.
Yeah, I mean, even with and this is going to be ridiculous, down year that he had with a 3.08 ERA, in 9 years, his career ERA is 2.52. His career K per 9 is 10.9. Like his strikeout to walk ratio in his career is 5.3. This is undoubtedly a top 2 pitcher in Mets history. He's 1 year shy of qualifying for the Hall of Fame. And that's obviously that'll happen this year as long as he stays healthy for the year. Like, if he re-ups with the Mets, he signs a
5-year deal.
5-year deal, maybe not opt out after the 3rd year. Who the hell knows? You're looking at a guy that is going to retire with one team, spend his entire career in one city, and the second he announces his retirement, you're going to see 48 up in the rafters. He's going to set all the records in Mets history. He's already, I think, 2 shy of setting the team record for most double-digit strikeout games, and that's again in 9 years. How many did he need for Seaver? How many did he have?
I think Seaver did until 82, right?
He was a Met for 12 seasons.
12.
So we'll do it in 2 shorter seasons, and that's not even
those were
factoring
injury
in
plagued.
Yeah, that's not even
And
factoring
2020.
in. Yeah, 2020. So a shortened year there. He missed like a year and a half because of injuries the past couple of years.
Right, he's an injury in 16, injury in 17, injury in 21, injury in 22.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think
if
you hope it means something to him.
you hope
you
it
really
does.
do.
You really do.
And the
type of competitor he is, you hope it does.
Let's see if I can quickly pull something up.
And if you look at the Athletic article that Tim Britton put out with a bunch of surveys and polls about the Mets here, I agree that of the top 3 free agents, the one that's most likely to come back is Edwin Diaz.
I would argue it's Brandon Nimmo.
Listen, I would say Nimmo's 3rd on that list.
No, I
really do.
My honest opinion is DeGrom is halfway out the door. DeGrom, I think we're gonna see a New York Times article in 2 days that DeGrom's house is for sale, or whatnot. I think you're
like that.
I think you're discounting the Wyoming boy from nothing who is afraid of change and a homebody.
But here's why I say Nimmo's
he's
3rd.
gonna
Not
get
because the
paid.
Mets aren't going to give him an offer. The Mets are going to try everything possible to bring as much back from this unit as possible. But you look at a guy in Brandon Nimmo and as a center fielder and in a wide open free agent market, but he's not the top center fielder available. Okay?
He's not.
Aaron Judge is going to get stupid money, whether it be the Yankees, the Giants, the Sox, whoever it may be. Someone's going to pay that man a ridiculous amount of money. So my thought is whoever doesn't win the Aaron Judge sweepstakes is then going to absolutely back up the Brinks truck and make a ridiculous offer for Brandon Nimmo that I just don't know if the Mets are going to match it.
But that's why I think if you're the Mets, you get that done before the Aaron Judge sweepstakes. Aaron Judge sounds great, but the Mets just won 101 games without him. So I think realistically, your first goal is try to keep this core intact.
I agree.
So if you're the Mets, I think that's Nimmo, DeGrom, Diaz. I think it's probably Trevor May, who looked really good down the stretch.
Oh, great.
I think it's probably.
I think Ottavino comes back too.
Ottavino. I think you can make a case. Michael Givens. I think you want to try and upgrade. I think if you're looking at pure upgrades, you want to upgrade your left-handed pitching out of the bullpen.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you can bring DeGrom back.
Mm-hmm.
You're now looking at DeGrom, Scherzer. Let's say you pick up the option on Carrasco. DeGrom, Scherzer, Carrasco, Peterson.
Where do you stand on Bassett?
He's gone.
You think he's gone?
I think. Oh God, yeah. If you're asking me, Mets that are most likely to not come back, number 1 is Chris Bassett, and I have that on solid ground.
Okay.
I think he's gone. I think this was very much a 1-year thing. Because I think the nature of the deal, the intent was to come to New York long term. You're just hearing him talk about how he made himself better by pitching in New York. He thought he rose to the occasion. Yeah. You're not pitching big games in Oakland. He needs to learn how to pitch big games. He did it in New York. He learned. He might not have done the best in them always.
Yeah.
But he definitely had his moments.
There is a mutual option in his contract for $19 million. I'm sure the Mets will pick it up, but I feel like he'll probably decline it, and then who knows from there.
Yeah, you think maybe he would just for you think maybe you hope maybe those last 2 games scared him enough to stay.
Yeah.
Because that, if you can run back out another year of DeGrom, Scherzer, Bassett.
You could have a lot worse options as your number 3 than Chris Bassett.
But I think, realistically, let's say you bring DeGrom back. You're looking at DeGrom, Scherzer, Carrasco, Peterson. Before we recorded, we were rattling off that laundry list of starting pitchers.
Yeah.
There are definitely options for them out there.
Sure.
I mean, let's say you want to double up on lefty starters. You go out and bring in a Jose Quintana as your number 4. That man was a game 1 starter for the Cardinals this year.
Yeah.
For a 95, 96 win Cardinals team. You go and get a Jameson Taillon. Tyler Anderson, Andrew Heaney, Evaldi, Carlos Rodon. There are definitely options out there. They're going to be trade options out there.
Of course.
I'm not going to say Ohtani just because everyone wants to say Ohtani.
Sure.
But there are going to be trade options out there. I think Sean Manaea is a free agent too. I could be wrong. I think he's an option.
I want to say you're right, but I'm not.
I mean,
not
Martin
100%
Perez.
on that.
There are definitely options out there.
Martin Perez is going to stay in Texas.
I don't think so.
Sean Manaea is a free agent.
There are definitely going to be options out there for the Mets. But, obviously the easiest one is just to retain guys. Pick up the option on Carrasco, try and bring Walker back, bring DeGrom back, slot Peterson in. So you're looking at DeGrom, Scherzer, Walker, Peterson, Carrasco. But I think they have enough. I think I trust them to find ways to get the starting pitching to work. The bullpen is what concerns me, just because you have seven guys hitting the market.
Yeah, that's why it's
even in the
pivotal to
world
bring
where
some of
you-
them back. Like
Even
I
in the
think
world
Ottavino
where you
has to
bring
come back.
back Ottavino, let's say you bring back Joely, Ottavino, May, and Diaz. You bring those 4. You're now looking at Joely, Ottavino, May, Diaz, Smith. And who's below that is
I think Trevor
Okay.
May's gone.
I'm going to make an incredibly hot take.
Okay.
The Mets are going to be significantly worse next year. They're not going to be a 100-win team.
Okay.
But I am saying this because they are going to have to take a year. I think you talk about long-term sustainability. They're going to have to let some of these dudes who they just called up in the first or second years, they're going to need to give them the reins for a year.
Sure.
You're going to need to go a year of Brett Beatty at third base to know if Brett Beatty's your third baseman of the future or not.
Yeah.
You're going to have to go a year of, you're going to have to go, 2-3 months beginning of the year, letting Mark Vientos play, letting him be your right-handed DH. You're going to have to let Alvarez catch. You're going to have to throw Montes de Oca out of the pen. You're going to have to throw
Listen,
Peterson.
he looked disgusting, so I have no problem with that. Jose Budo is going to get some run too.
I think their pitching is good. I just think McCann does not. I think you're at the point where you're calling up different dudes every other day that they didn't, they just didn't know what to call for a lot of these guys.
I also think, just because you said his name, James McCann has caught his last innings with the Mets. I think that's abundantly clear.
He's going to somehow be one of the better catchers in the market.
Yeah,
I saw a list of
he's going to
available
get traded.
catchers. He was one of 4 guys with a positive F4 last year who is expected to be available this year. But I think if you're looking at it, you're going to have to give Alvarez a year to catch. You're going to have to give Beatty a year at third. You're going to have to let Vientos get some run. You're going to have to give Peterson 30 starts. You're going to have to let guys like Montes de Oca, like
Moses, the
Nagosic.
catcher market is weak.
Right. So that's where you hope that, like McCann on 2 years, $24 million for a team like Boston. You're like, all right, that's not that bad.
Yeah.
Because you're not looking for the Mets for like, holy shit, we still have 2 more years. Like, all right, well, 2 years. If he sucks for this year, just cut him. And then you're only on the hook for 1 year at $12 million. I don't think he's going to be as hard to move as people think.
No, especially if you attack a prospect on him. Like,
I don't even think I think there's a chance you can just like, maybe you swap him for a bad relief contract.
Sure.
There are plenty of relievers out there on bad contracts.
Yeah. Like just looking at the free agent catching market, there's Wilson Contreras, and then holy hell is it bad? Because then it goes to Mike Zunino, Gary Sanchez, Tucker Barnhart, Martin Maldonado, who's going to die in Astro, Omar Narvaez, and then a bunch of guys that are irrelevant or going to retire.
It's a lot of guys who have flashed or been decent platoon guys, but they're going to want. But reality is they're not starters. But they're going to get paid like starters.
Sure.
That's what James McCann did very well in the open market.
Yeah, like Gary Sanchez is going to want paid like a starter,
but he's not.
He's not.
Omar Narvaez
is going to want to get defensively.
This was the first year in his career he graded out better defensively than he did offensively, and he graded out as a slightly below league average defender.
Right.
That tells you where Gary's bat is now.
Yeah.
But you're gonna have to give these guys a year to figure it out. And I think it's something like we talked about going back to the initial point of this conversation was, do you think Billy Epler's the guy? I think you hope Billy sees that, because if you want the long-term sustainability the Dodgers and the Braves have, you have to give these guys some run.
God, Gary Sanchez was really bad this year.
Yeah, he was awful.
I didn't realize how bad he was.
But I mean, looking at their payroll for next year, the Mets have McCann on the books at 12, Canna 11.5, Escobar 9.5. Carrasco is a $14 million option that I believe is a vesting option.
I'm sorry, for
Bassett
who?
Knight Carrasco.
But
if the vesting option doesn't hit, I think it becomes a team option.
For 23, you're saying?
Yeah. But then your guaranteed contracts over 20 million, you have
It was a vesting option for 14 million.
right. But I think if the vesting doesn't hit, it becomes a team option.
Okay.
Because this is that initial. He's still on that initial like 8 or 9 year deal he signed with Cleveland.
Mm.
But your contracts over 20 million next year, you have Marte at just under 21, Lindor has 34-1, Scherzer at 43, and never ending threes.
Yeah.
So the Mets have room to spend.
Yeah. And that's
if you're
again
looking at their payroll, but I think you're going to expect Walker to decline 6 million. You're expecting DeGrom to decline to 20.5. You're expecting Bassett's 19 to not be on the payroll.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have money to spend.
McCann's going to be off the books likely.
Right. Figure
Darren Ruff will probably find a way to get off the books. I wouldn't be surprised. You know what?
Darren Ruff's sitting at $3 million for next year.
Yeah, and that's about $45 million too much.
That's fair. But
there's one interesting character.
You know who we forgot about?
Who's that?
Their lefty out of the pen next year is probably going to be Joey Lucchesi. That man is not a starting pitcher anymore, but I'm excited. Those are the best vibes in the 2021.
Those were vibes, man.
Not the Marcus Stroman vibes, but
no.
Sorry.
Here's one guy that
Ruff
I think
is on the
is
books for
interesting.
$3 million, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh,
what do we do? What do we do? What's going to happen with Escobar?
I think he just turns into some sort of utility, whatever. I think you move him if you can. You try and sell high on in September.
Because $9.5 million for his production is not bad. It's not bad. He plays good defense.
It's a little bit more than you'd like.
But I'm not mad about that.
But if you're looking at it as a whole, you're looking at it as
for a guy that bobs 20 homers, he's going to drive in 70, plays a solid third base. 9.5 isn't bad.
But I think
you're going to have Brett Beatty there. So are you going to pay $9.5 million for a guy that's not going to play every day, who might come in as a defensive replacement? He might be your main DH.
I think. They're not going to get rid of Vogelbach's on a cheap enough contract. He's not going to leave.
Yeah, it was $1.5 million for next year.
He'll be back.
Yeah,
I think in likelihood, for now, you pencil in Vientos as his opposite.
Okay.
I think you try and move Escobar for a reliever.
Okay.
I think it's where you go as the Mets. You're looking at it. You have 2 starting caliber third basemen. You move from your riches to help.
Can I propose something?
Struggle.
Can I propose something? I don't
as
know. There has to be other pieces in there. What's that?
As long as it's not to me.
I'm sorry. I'm spoken for. I'm sure other pieces would have to be involved. Escobar to a place like Tampa for Brandon Lau.
I think it'd be more like Escobar to Tampa for a Fairbanks.
Well, listen.
I think if you're,
if we're getting Fairbanks, sign me the fuck up.
I think
that
it's
guy's
more
disgusting.
Like Escobar plus for Fairbanks, Escobar plus for Jason Adam. But you hope he leaves the weird homophobia in.
I don't think Jason Adam and Mark Hanna would mesh very well. So you don't want to disrupt the vibes in the locker room. Also, Mark Hanna needs a new walk-up song next year, which is
that was so upsetting. That was so upsetting when I saw it.
That was. You want to talk about tough scenes?
Here are Mets relievers, relief options for the Mets next year who are under contract.
Currently on the payroll.
Mind you, I also want to remind you, Terrence Gore is under contract for next year. He was arbitration 1 eligible.
You love that.
Just throwing that out there.
You love that.
They did sign John Curtis earlier in the year, former Marlins reliever, to a 2-year deal. He underwent
Mhm.
Tommy John at the end of 2021. So he'll be under contract for next year. Drew Smith, Michael Givens has a $3.5 million vesting option. He said to love Buck, or not vesting option, mutual option. I think if you're bringing Michael Givens back, 3.5 is the perfect price for it.
Okay.
And those mutual options almost never get picked up, but I think that's one that absolutely could.
Right.
You have Lucchese, McGill if you want to go down that route.
I think he's a starter
Sean,
next year.
Sean Reed Foley.
All right. So we're going to be doing squats next year. Okay.
But you have Nagosic, you have Montes de Oca, you have guys like that, obviously. But those are guys that are.
Let me throw another proposition at you for a reliever on the free
Go
agent
for it.
market. Do you, and this guy was awful this year, do you buy low on someone like Craig Kimbrell?
I think he's cooked.
Oh, he's cooked. Don't get me wrong. He's not your
I
closer.
don't think you buy low on him at all. I think if you're the Mets, you're looking for a nice blend of veteran high leverage arms and youth that you're leveraging, that you're teaching to get into those roles.
Right.
So I think if you're the Mets, you could if I'm giving out like an ideal bullpen for the Mets next year, I think obviously you're looking at Diaz as your closer. You want to bring back Diaz, Ottavino, May. I think then you want Givens back. There you have 4. Pental Lucchesian as a lefty. Drew Smith. Then I would go with Nagosic and Montes de Oca.
You still got to upgrade the lefties there, though.
I think you could argue, okay, let May walk and instead gun for a lefty.
Right.
I think what's his face is gonna he's a Tiger. Not yeah, he's a Tiger. Chafin's gonna be a
Sure.
reliever again. But I think you're part of the sustainability that we see with the Dodgers is they let these young guys work their way in for a year or two. Then when the veterans are ready to walk and go elsewhere, they do.
Mhm.
It's next man up.
Yeah.
But I think you have a lot of raw talent with guys like Montes de Oca, and the Gosick has proven more than capable.
Right.
You're gonna have to let these guys get their chances,
Sure.
or else you're in a never-ending cycle of spending $350 million to get dumped in the early rounds.
Yeah.
And the reason why the Dodgers are so sustainable because they have the perfect blend of, guys like Gavin Lux making no money
Right.
and producing like he did, and then guys like Freeman and Betts being MVP caliber players making the money they do.
Yeah.
And you need that blend. So maybe it's like a Will Smith. Maybe you buy low on a Britton, buy low on a Taylor Rogers. Bring back Brad Hand. Whatever it may be. Danny Duffy maybe. But there are ample options. There are gonna be guys in the trade market like always. Guys we're not even thinking of. Guys we might see the tweet and we're like, oh shit, yeah. There gonna be plenty of them. But I think it's just a matter of you're gonna have to get creative with it. I think the offense for the most part will be the same. The guys they
Yeah.
bring back will be the same. Maybe they try and Naquin will be gone. They probably try and upgrade the 4th outfield spot there because I think that's part of what did them in is just have such a drop off from going from when Marte gets hurt to Naquin. It's such a steep drop off. I mean, you try and upgrade there. If you bring Nimmo back, I think aside from that, it is exactly the same.
Pretty much.
Sans you're swapping Alvarez out for McCann, but the bullpen is where they're gonna have to get the most creative. Starting pitching, you're just throwing stupid money at DeGrom, picking up Carrasco's option, negotiating with Walker, slotting Peterson in. I mean, I don't think anyone's gonna be mad if their 2023 rotation is Scherzer, DeGrom, Peterson, Walker, Carrasco. I don't think anyone's gonna be upset with that. No one's. And Taiwan seems to really enjoy New York. It's a
Mhm.
really good fit mutually. I mean, the fact he was their number 4 this year, basically, and he was probably the best 4 in baseball. He's a 3 on every other team, aside from like Houston.
Sure.
But the bullpen is where they're gonna have to get the most creative. And I think you hope Billy's got a couple tricks up his sleeve.
I'm sure he does.
I mean,
listen,
no
again,
one saw
going
Max
back to
Scherzer coming.
our path before, exactly, and that kind of goes back to DeGrom a little bit. the entire report was Scherzer wants to stay out west. He doesn't want to come back east. He's going to stay in LA. He's going to do this. Everything was West Coast, West Coast, West Coast. But then Steve Cohen throws $43 million at him. He's a New York Met. I'm not doubting this regime until I'm proven that I need to doubt this regime.
No, I think that's really a way to look at it is why be pessimistic until they give you a reason to? I mean,
Right.
obviously the ending sucked, especially the final 6 games or final 9 games.
Yeah.
But when you look at this as a whole, 77 to 101. Rojas to Buck.
Mm-hmm.
Stroman to Scherzer.
Yeah. Stroman to match the Scherzer, kind of.
Yeah. I mean, and then
Dom Smith to Starling Marte.
Right. No, exactly. The strides that were made. JD to Canna.
Mm-hmm.
Don't doubt until they give you a reason to.
Yeah. I like I said, I believe in this regime, and I think I do agree with you that they're going to take a step back next year just because it's almost impossible to top 101 wins.
And I think everyone and their mothers will agree they overachieved.
I mean, listen,
I think
wins is insane.
Right. And you're watching
to your point, you need to let Alvarez kind of get his feet wet in the as a major league catcher. You need Brett Beatty, you need Vientos, these younger guys to kind of prove their worth. So they're going to have to get some run at the major league level. Who knows how it goes? I have faith that especially Beatty and Alvarez are going to be fine, but we don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very interesting offseason since they're going to have to get creative. It's always fun to get there, just to throw stupid money at guys left and right and see what sticks. But it's fun to watch them get creative too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the creativity pays off in a lot of ways.
It sure does. But now I say we
hot takes.
What's that?
I don't even think we can do hot takes.
I was gonna say we can end it off with
a
a World Series prediction, but
I can. We can do playoff hot takes for the Astros aren't losing another game.
They're not losing another game. They're running the table.
They're gonna win 7 in a row.
I don't hate that, but listen, they definitely could the way they look.
Especially if you win 3 in a row against the Yankees, I have them sweeping whoever's coming out of the NL.
Listen, whoever wins the ALCS is winning the World Series. That's not even a hot take. I think that's whatever. Yeah, I'm gonna go Astros or Padres in like 5.
Yeah, I'm going Astros over Padres in 4.
Surprised you didn't say in 3.
Effectively, could be.
Yeah, it really could be.
I mean, you saw the way. If Verlander is expelling his playoff demons, pack it up, go home.
Yeah, no, they look dominant, dude. And this is without Altuve without getting a hit. Altuve is 0-for-23 or whatever it is. Oh man.
Well, because you have because you had Jeremy Pena, who Buck's quote on him was awesome.
I didn't hear it.
The only Dominican dude to ever go to the University of Maine.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Dude, that team is so good. Jordan's a stud. Yeah. That's it. We'll talk more in a week, 2 weeks after the World Series. We'll see. We'll figure it out. But
probably after World Series, really it's
been a fun postseason despite the Mets losing. It's gonna be a fun offseason. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully DeGrom comes back. Hopefully Diaz comes back. We'll see what Steve Cohen and Billy Upper have in store for the New York Mets and the fans.
You can never count out the emergency episodes.
You can never
know when you're gonna need one.
You never know. You never know.
But hey, I mean, there could be Diaz news that drops. We could 7:00 tonight. It's 2:12 on Thursday. That's the nice thing about this exclusive negotiating window they have.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing stopping them from figuring something out today.
Who knows? I'll be at work, but we'll find a way to record.
Yeah, well, considering where you work, I think you'll be fine.
Well,
not this weekend. I leave for Denver. I am somewhat regretfully going to Broncos Jets.
Is that the place you want to go right now?
I want to go to Denver. I don't know if I want to go to Mile High.
With Mr. Wolverine blood over there?
I'm going to Avalanche Kraken Friday night.
That sounds cool.
I'm going to I think I'm sightseeing Saturday.
Solid.
Going to the game on Sunday.
Well, Godspeed. Enjoy it, I guess.
Melvin Gordon revenge game against himself.
Oh, yeah. All right,
Antonio
let's-
Slater.
Let's get the hell out of here.
Jack Ramsey.
It's
Like,
Antonio
comment,
Slater. It's
subscribe,
Jack
whatever.
Ramsey. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Follow us on Twitter. Subscribe on YouTube. Unsubscribe. Resubscribe on Twitter. Make another account. Subscribe on that YouTube. And as
Tell your
always,
friends.
tell your friends. And as always, LFGM.